with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
And coming up in just a bit on Morning Joe, we will speak live with Israel's ambassador to the United States, Michael Herzog. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of dock workers are on strike at major ports this morning from Maine to Texas. It comes after the industry's largest union failed to reach an agreement with the United States Maritime Alliance, the group that represents port management. CNBC is reporting preparations for a strike have been underway in 14 American cities after a protracted battle over wage increases and the use of automation. Now, billions of dollars in trade have been stranded as the International Longshoremen's Association launches its first strike since 1977. We'll have a live report from one of the impacted ports ahead on Morning Joe. More than 120 people are now reported dead after Hurricane Helene swept through the southeast, bringing widespread destruction and flooding. NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest from hard-hit Asheville, North Carolina.
Hurricane Helene has moved on, but left in its wake a trail of death and destruction. Officials in North Carolina say they were blinded by Helene's sheer intensity. Homes swept away, restaurants and shops torn to pieces. Communities cut off from clean water and electricity, leaving residents nowhere to go.
Shelters are at capacity. Those shelters only provide overnight lodging, food, and water. FEMA is not at these locations. This is basic necessities only.
Asheville, among the hardest hit, remains largely cut off from relief, frustrating residents.
Nobody's going to help us. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do.
Do you have any faith in the federal response here?
No. Ricky
and Devonna Brown's auto shop has been in this location for 30 years.
This is devastating. I mean, this is hard to see it. I mean, this is hard to come and look at. You know what I mean? This is your whole life right here. And it's this old building to somebody, but to us, this is our life.
Drop-off of communication has left relatives of missing locals pleading with officials for information on their loved ones.
What do you say to the residents who feel that the local and federal response wasn't fast enough following this storm?
So first, people are working around the clock. What we want to tell people is that more help is on the way and help is continuing.
In North Carolina, every single county has been impacted. The western part of the state by catastrophic flooding, the eastern half by heavy rains and tornadoes.
Do you have the manpower right now to handle this response?
So this is a multi-federal agency response, which is why we're bringing in people from across the federal government.
FEMA says they'll deploy 1,200 first responders to the state to support relief efforts. Relief that can't come soon enough for towns like Boone, 2 hours north of Asheville, where mudslides rip through neighborhoods. 100 miles south, the river in Henderson County reached 30 feet.
Oh, my God.
Smashing all previous flood records. Rivers and lakes jam with debris. Back in Asheville, residents don't know where to even begin.
It's a lot of work, destroyed a lot of things that I loved, of course, and my business and my job and my livelihood and all that. So, you know, I don't know.
Just staggering pictures, and the more we see, the more we learn, the worse it seems to get. NBC's George Solis reporting there from Asheville, North Carolina. Let's bring in the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. Mr. Chairman, great to have you with us. A lot to talk to you about, including the vice presidential debate tonight and the state of this presidential race. But you're a South Carolinian. You've been through these hurricanes. The swath of destruction we're seeing now from Florida up through Georgia and the Carolinas and into Tennessee. What are you hearing from your home state?
Well, you know, I was just back home, and really, it breaks my heart. You know, I have so many family and friends in Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. I was just telling you all, we were planning to go to Asheville to Omni Grove for Thanksgiving because my wife we didn't want to cook. We wanted to go there and hike and with our boys, and it just breaks my heart because we spend so much time there, and there's so many good people in those communities, and they are desperately crying out for help. You know, I had some good friends who lost their home burned down. Thank God they were able to get out of it, but it's devastating in so many ways, and I just hope that we can put partisanship aside and just help people. Just help people. And Donald Trump, I'm talking specifically to you. Let's put all this noise aside and let's just focus on helping these people who desperately just need their brothers and sisters to be good keepers of them.
I think the good news is the adults are doing exactly what you're saying. President Biden is in fact talking to Governor Kemp in Georgia, and they're doing the things they have to do. Donald Trump, of course, has to make political hay by telling outright lies.
Yeah, it's just so sad to see. We just all need to roll up our sleeves and help in whatever way that we can. If it's sending money, if it's volunteering, folks, let's just focus on helping these very, very good people. I remember Hurricane Hugo that hit South Carolina. I mean, we didn't have electricity for 3 weeks. I, as a kid, thought it was fun when my mom said, well, we're going to barbecue every day, right? I love barbecuing, but the fact that you didn't have gas, you didn't have electricity, it's hot. It's just devastating to see this, and it breaks my heart every time.
Yeah, and these good people are going to need everybody's help for a long time to come, in for the long haul. Let's turn to that vice presidential debate. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio will face off in the one and only vice presidential debate tonight. CBS News hosting the event here in New York. It will be moderated by CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. CBS says there will be no live fact-checking by the moderators, but the broadcast will feature a QR code on the screen, which will link to a real-time fact-check by CBS journalists so you can follow along. There will not be a live audience inside the debate hall for the 90-minute event, but unlike the two presidential debates, microphones will not be muted while the other candidate is speaking. So, Mr. Chairman, what should we expect tonight? What is the objective for Governor Walz?
Well, listen, I think you're going to see a stark contrast between a representative of a party that wants to take us back, who believes that America's best days are in our past. And then you're going to see someone who is good, who's genuine, who is that good, funny uncle that you like to hang out with, but who's going to talk about how we are going to help people get a leg up, how we're going to move all Americans ahead. Listen, Tim Walz didn't go to Yale. I'm a Yalie. And when you go to Yale, they teach you how to debate, right? You can be a skilled debater. But the one thing they can't teach you is genuineness. They can't teach you authenticity. They can't teach you empathy. And I can tell you, J.D. Vance doesn't have any of that. This is a man who is willing to lie about his own constituents. And will say that I'm lying about what's going on, right? But we know, in terms of Tim Walz, this is a man who brightens up the room every time he walks in there, because people know that he sees them, that he hears them, but most importantly, he values them. And that's the contrast that I hope the American people will see on that debate stage tonight.
And Simone, J.D. Vance will be asked undoubtedly about his comments about Springfield. Those are people he represents, legal immigrants there contributing to the community. He will be asked about his comments there. He'll be asked about his previous criticism, intense in many regards, of Donald Trump several years back. There's always this question of whether a vice presidential debate even matters. So what will you be looking for tonight?
Look, first of all, I think conventional wisdom will tell you, oh, it doesn't really matter much. It won't change the state of the race. But I think I disagree with conventional wisdom. There was a 1998 or 88 series, The Temptations. It aired on NBC. One of the iconic lines is, "Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis." The David Ruffin character is telling the other folks on his other band members, they coming to see me. They're not coming to see you. And one could argue you could apply that to the vice presidential debates. They're not coming in really people aren't voting for the vice president. They're voting for the president. But I think in this election, given the people on the ballot, Vice President Kamala Harris, a vice president, okay, vice presidents matter. Donald Trump, who is the oldest candidate in this race, and there is a real question if J.D. Vance would be ready to serve on day one if something were to happen to former President Trump if he were to be elected. This matters. And this is an election where the vice presidential candidates have been, some of the most explosive things that have happened have been because of what J.D. Vance has said. And so this debate is more about them than I think it would usually be. And I will be watching for how they handle that, but also pivot back to the top of the ticket, because that's really what they're supposed to be there to do. Do no harm. Make sure you get the message out, draw the contrast, but don't make it about you. But unfortunately, this is uniquely, I think, really about the contrast between J.D. Vance and Governor Walz.
And Claire, this debate is unique in its timing, because it's, at least for now, the last word. We're not expecting another presidential debate. Usually the VP debate is sort of the middle of the debates. This one, it could be the last big moment like this. What do you think Governor Walz needs to do? And in particular, are there any areas where he needs to shore up the ticket? He needs to address things that perhaps the vice president, at least to this point, hasn't.
Well, I think it's important he not try to do too much. He needs to be relatable. And as Jamie said, he naturally is very authentic. This isn't a guy who puts on, you know, as famous people once said, he doesn't use a dollar word when a nickel word will do. Whereas J.D. Vance believes in dollar words. He's a little bit sanctimonious and preaches at people and comes off as kind of like, I'm smarter than you. So I think it really is more about tone than it is about content. I will say this. I'm sure that Tim Walz is prepared that they're going to try to make him a raging liberal in a flannel suit.
Yep.
And he will have to be gently pushed back and make sure that, you know, caring about whether kids eat at school and caring about whether they have health care and caring about women having the liberty to control their own bodies are not radical ideas. Those are ideas that are widely supported in America. Jamie, on a topic different than the debate specifically, I wanted to ask you, it seems to me at this point, Trump has given up trying to convince people that are undecided. And he is going darker and in a really more gloomy and desperate and almost trying to find more voters to come out for him. Mm-hmm. He's trying to get those low propensity white voters that are mad at the world and try to get them to care enough to come out and vote for him. So really, I think at this point, this election is about who's going to show up. Talk to me about why we should be optimistic about who's going to show up for Harrison Walz. What are the registration numbers looking like? What are the early voting numbers looking like? And is him going so dark, is that in fact a motivator for our low propensity voters to finally come out and say, hey, we don't really want to go back to this chaos?
Well, you know, we know in close elections, the margin of difference is the ground game. And what Donald Trump did when he took over the RNC was he destroyed whatever. You can have criticisms of Ronna McDaniel, but she was at least building some type of ground operation in the RNC. All of that disappeared because he just gutted the whole process, and he shepherded out to third-party groups, which third-party groups are helpful on the margins, but they don't do what is necessary. Look at what we're doing at the DNC right now. I just announced that and Howard Dean started the 50-state strategy, but the first time in one election year, we have given grants out to every single state party, even in our Democrats abroad in territories. We have a ground operation that we have been building for the last 3.5 years that is strong and only getting stronger. Thousands of volunteers signed up when Kamala Harris became the nominee. In Florida, we're now at, 50,000 new volunteers. In North Carolina, similar. In Pennsylvania. And we have the apparatus in order to put those volunteers on the ground, making phone calls, out there pushing people to the polls. And so I feel really, really good about the difference that we have there on the ground as compared to the Republicans. I don't know what they have.
You know, the infrastructure matters. That's how you win elections.
Does matter.
At least back when I used to do elections, that's how you won them. We had Dan Cannon on from the Harris campaign on our show on Sunday, and he talked about just that, the infrastructure and whatnot. But I can't help but think about the women that Melissa Murray and I talked to, some of the women for our special, Black Women in America Road to 2024. And these were millennial Black women, the oldest millennials this year, 44, the youngest millennials are 27. These were mid-age millennials, folks that are my age. I'm 34. And they said that they understand the stakes of this election, but they don't know if they're going to vote. And what struck me in our conversation